Ethan didn't think. He dropped the mop, boots splashing through the thin layer of water as he sprinted toward the echo. His heart pounded faster with every step, not from fear, but from the strange instinct that tonight was about to rewrite his life. At the far end of the hallway, a woman lay collapsed beside a vending machine, her breath shallow, her skin frighteningly pale under the harsh school lighting. Her hair, long and dark, fanned across the tile like spilled ink. "Ma'am? Hey, can you hear me?" Ethan knelt, hands trembling as he reached for her wrist. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath his fingers, like a bird struggling in a storm. Her eyes flickered open just long enough for him to see something unusual, not panic, but confusion carved by exhaustion. She tried to speak, but the words dissolved into a cough as her airway constricted, chest rising sharply then collapsing in a frightening rhythm. An allergic reaction. Severe. He recognized it instantly. Lily had gone through one last year. His chest tightened, remembering the terror of that day, the way her tiny body shook in his arms. He looked around desperately. No EpiPens. No emergency kits. The nurse's office was locked. The nearest hospital was 15 minutes away. She didn't have 15 minutes. Ethan swallowed hard, his mind racing back to the CPR refresher video he watched at home, lips sealing over mouth, breath delivered manually if airway blockages threatened consciousness. People joked about rescue kisses being dramatic, but this wasn't a movie. It was this woman's life. He positioned her carefully, angling her head the way he'd been taught. "I'm here," he whispered, as if the reassurance could hold her to the world a little longer. "Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered again. She seemed to understand something dire was happening. Her hand brushed weakly against his wrist, as if to say please. The hallway felt impossibly still. Ethan pressed his mouth to hers, giving slow, steady breaths, counting under his breath the way he had with Lily. Her chest rose, shallow but responsive. He repeated the motion, again and again, until finally her airway loosened enough for her breathing to settle into a shaky but real rhythm. She wasn't safe, but she was here. Consciousness tugged at her again as her lashes lifted, revealing eyes of deep hazel, glassy with distress but alive. "You saved me," she rasped, voice small. "Don't thank me yet," Ethan said, helping her sit up. "We need to get you to a hospital." She nodded weakly but winced, pressing a hand to her throat. Her designer coat, soaked and stained, looked wildly out of place in the modest school corridor. Before he could ask her anything else, the sound of heels clicking rapidly echoed toward them. Two security guards rounded the corner in a frenzy. "There she is, Ms. Hart." They froze at the sight of Ethan kneeling close to her. One guard rushed to her side. "Ma'am, we've been looking everywhere. Your driver said you never made it home. Are you hurt? Should we call the ambulance?" Ethan frowned. "Ms. Hart? As in Ava Hart? The billionaire tech founder whose face appeared on magazines, billboards, donation plaques? That Ava Hart?" She lifted a shaking hand toward Ethan instead. "He saved my life," she whispered, struggling but determined. The guards exchanged a look, part shock, part suspicion, part something Ethan couldn't quite read. Ava tried to stand, but her knees buckled. Ethan caught her before she hit the ground again, his hands steady on her arms. Her gaze held us for a moment too long, as if she was studying the stranger who had just breathed life back into her lungs. "Please," she murmured, barely audible. "Come with me. Don't leave." Ethan hesitated. Lily, he needed to get back home. But looking at Ava's trembling hands, he couldn't walk away. Not yet. He nodded softly. "I won't." The guards let him outside, rain still pouring heavily. A black SUV idled at the curb, headlights glowing through the storm. As they helped Ava inside, she turned once more toward him, her voice cracking. "What is your name?" "Ethan," he said. Her lips parted, almost like his name meant something she wasn't ready to explain yet. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered, "for not letting me die alone." Somewhere inside him, something shifted. A quiet ripple he couldn't explain yet, but he felt it. Before he climbed into the SUV behind her, "You tell me, if you were standing there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just tap like to show that compassion still matters." The SUV's interior smelled faintly of leather and rain-soaked clothing as the doors shut behind them. Ethan sat rigid beside Ava, unsure whether to offer comfort or give her space. She leaned back, eyes half closed, fingertips pressed lightly to her throat as the city lights streaked across the windows like blurred fireflies. "Hospital?" the driver asked. Ava lifted her gaze toward Ethan first, as if silently asking permission. He gave a small nod. "Yes," she whispered. "Please." The car eased into traffic. For a moment, the only sound was a rhythmic clicking of the turn signal and a faint tremor in Ava's breaths. Ethan kept glancing at her, making sure her breathing stayed steady. Every few seconds, her eyes drifted back to him, curious, unsettled, searching for something she hadn't yet named. "You don't have to stay," she finally said, her voice gentle but raw. "This must be overwhelming." Ethan shook his head. "I want to make sure you're okay. After that, I'll head home." "What were you doing at the school so late?" she asked. He exhaled softly. "Overtime. My daughter's sick, so I'm covering extra shifts where I can." A flicker of emotion crossed her face. Guilt? Gratitude? Something deeper? She opened her mouth, but the SUV jolted over a pothole, making her wince and interrupting the moment. "Easy," Ethan murmured, steadying her arm instinctively. Her breath caught again at his touch, maybe from pain, maybe something else, and she didn't move away. It took another 10 minutes to reach the hospital. Security escorted Ava inside, while nurses rushed her through triage. Ethan stood back, watching as they fitted her with monitors and administered medication to counter the reaction still lingering in her system. She kept looking over her shoulder, making sure he hadn't left. When they finally settled her into a private room, a nurse turned to Ethan. "Are you family?" Before Ethan could answer, Ava whispered, "He's the reason I'm alive. Please, let him stay a little longer." The nurse nodded without question. Ethan took a seat by the window while Ava rested against the pillows, her breathing easier now, though her voice still carried the tremor of someone who had come too close to the edge. Minutes passed. The rain eased outside, softening into a steady hush along the glass. "You saved me twice tonight," she said softly, "once with your breath and again by staying." Ethan looked down at his hands. Anyone would have helped. "No," she said firmly. "Not everyone does." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but strange, like the universe had pressed pause on both their lives. Then her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She glanced at the screen and immediately flipped it over, face tightening. "You can answer," Ethan said. "I don't want to," she murmured. "It's complicated." He didn't press. But when her eyes softened, he realized she was teetering between exhaustion and confession, the way people sometimes do when fear has shaken something loose inside them. "I shouldn't have been at that school," she said quietly. "My assistant canceled a meeting their hours earlier, but I went anyway. I don't know why. Just a feeling." Ethan frowned. "A feeling? Like I wasn't supposed to go home yet. Like something was waiting for me there." She gave a fragile laugh. "Turns out it was you." He didn't know how to respond to that, so he didn't. He simply watched her, the billionaire who had thousands of people waiting for her decisions every day. Yet tonight she looked painfully human, stripped of any armor wealth normally gave. Her eyes drifted toward him again, studying him with a softness he wasn't used to. "You said you have a daughter?" "Lily. She's 8, smart, stubborn, too brave for her own good." He paused. "Her mom passed a few years ago." Ava's expression shifted instantly. Sympathy, sorrow, respect. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's okay," he said, though it wasn't. "We manage. Some days are harder. Some days feel impossible." He looked away, forcing a small breath. "But kindness has carried us farther than I can explain." His voice caught slightly, a crack quickly swallowed. Ava didn't comment, but her hand reached out, fingers brushing his wrist in a gesture so gentle it nearly unraveled him. Not romantic, not pity, just understanding. Something he hadn't felt from another adult in a long time. And strangely, she seemed relieved to offer it. Lightning flashed outside the window. briefly illuminating the worry lines on her face. She seemed to want to tell him something more, something heavy, but a nurse entered, checking her vitals, giving them both a moment to collect themselves. By the time the nurse stepped out, Ava's eyes were glistening. "Ethan," she said quietly, "have you ever felt like your whole life was built on things you don't talk about?" He looked at her, truly looked, and saw it. The weight beneath her success, the loneliness woven into her breathing, the question she was afraid to ask out loud. "Yes," he answered softly. "More than you know." She inhaled shakily, as if his honesty gave her permission to feel whatever trembled inside her chest. "Have you ever had someone step in for you when no one else would?" "Right, yes. And tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think." Ava's breathing steadied over the next hour, though exhaustion softened her features, leaving her looking younger, almost fragile. Ethan stayed near the window, unsure if he should give her space or sit beside her. But every time she stirred, her gaze drifted toward him, like his presence anchored her in a night that had nearly taken her away. When the clock crept past midnight, a soft knock sounded at the door. A man in an expensive coat stepped inside, rain dripping from a hem. His hair was slicked back, his jaw tightened with worry that cracked into relief when he saw Ava awake. "Ava," he breathed, rushing to her bedside. "My God, we couldn't reach you. Are you hurt?" She blinked slowly. "Michael?" Ethan watched, suddenly feeling the odd weight of being the outsider. Michael, tall, polished, every bit the corporate executive, took her hand with familiarity that suggested they were close. Maybe family, maybe more. But Ava gently slipped her fingers away. "What happened?" Michael asked, his voice low but urgent. "The board is in chaos. Your security team is panicking, and who is this?" His eyes snapped toward Ethan, sharp and assessing. Ethan straightened. "Just someone who was there." Ava lifted her chin. "He saved my life." Michael's brows lifted in disbelief. "Saved? Ava, your guards said they found you unconscious in a school hallway. What were you even doing there?" Ava's throat bobbed with a swallow. "I don't know. I went because I felt like I needed to." Michael exhaled hard, running a hand over his face. "You can't keep doing this. Wandering off alone. Ignoring security protocols. You're too important." Ethan flinched slightly at that. Important. Untouchable. A world he would never fit into. But Ava's gaze slid to him again, lingering with quiet insistence. "Michael," she said softly, "please step outside for a moment." Michael hesitated. "Ava, please." After another tense glance toward Ethan, he stepped out, shutting the door behind him. Ava let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry you had to hear that. Michael means well. He's been with the company since I started it. He still acts like I'm 20 with nothing but a risky idea." Ethan nodded slowly. "He seems protective." Her eyes softened. "He is. But sometimes protection feels a lot like control." She traced the hospital blanket with her fingertips, thoughtful. People think success makes life bigger, but sometimes it just makes the walls higher. Ethan hesitated, then moved a little closer. "Don't have to explain anything to me." A small smile touched her mouth. "That's exactly why I want to." A beat of silence passed, an unspoken bridge forming between two lives that shouldn't have touched, but somehow did. She took a slow breath. "My father was a janitor. Most people don't know that." Her eyes fluttered down, voice dipping into something tender. "He used to come home with hands cracked from bleach, but he'd still lift me up like I weighed nothing. He taught me everything about work, about people, about not mistaking wealth for worth." Ethan felt something pull in his chest. He hadn't expected that connection. Not from her, not tonight. When he died, Ava continued softly, "I promised myself I'd create a world where no one like him felt unseen. But somewhere along the way," her voice thinned, "I became surrounded by people who see me, but not me." The confession hung between them like warm breath in winter. Ethan sat gently at the edge of her bed, not touching her, just close enough that she didn't feel alone. "I think," he said quietly, "your father would be proud of you." Her eyes glistened, surprise flashing across her features before emotion replaced it. "You don't know that." "I do." Ethan said, voice steady, certain. Because a person who still remembers where they came from, even after everything, is someone worth being proud of. Her lips trembled, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. Not from fear, not from pain, but from hearing something she hadn't allowed herself to believe in a long time. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded, his own chest tight. The moment stretched, softened by quiet understanding. Then her phone buzzed again, the same number lighting up the screen. She stared at it with something like dread. You okay? Ethan asked. Ava closed her eyes. It's my mother. She doesn't know I'm here yet. And when she does, the questions will start. He didn't push further. He could sense the wound beneath her tone. The rain outside had faded to nothing. Only the hum of hospital machines filled the room now, slow and steady like a heartbeat trying to find its rhythm again. Ava glanced at him, voice soft. Ethan, everyone has someone they once leaned on. Someone who shaped them. Besides Lily, who was yours? He looked out the window. My brother. When our parents left, he stepped in. He taught me how to shave, how to change tires, how to be someone Lily could depend on. He swallowed. He passed 2 years before my wife. I guess loss runs in cycles. Ava's hand reached out again, not tentative this time, but deliberate. Her fingers wrapped gently around his. I'm glad you were there tonight, she said. More than I can explain. Ethan squeezed her hand once, gently. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. A soft quiet settled over the hospital room, broken only by the distant murmur of nurses changing shifts. Ava kept her fingers around Ethan's a little longer than she intended, as if afraid releasing him would pull her back into a world she wasn't ready to return to. Eventually, she let go, but the warmth lingered between them. Michael re-entered after a tentative knock, his expression clipped, professional. Ava, the doctor says you've stabilized. They want to observe you for a few more hours. After that, you'll be clear to go home. She nodded, but her gaze flicked to Ethan again. Thank you, Michael. Michael hesitated, then glanced between them. Ava, may I speak with you privately? Her jaw tightened. Whatever you want to say, you can say it here. Michael exhaled sharply. Fine. The board is already drafting a statement. They need to know what happened. And you disappearing for hours without telling security? That can't happen again. You scared everyone. Ava's shoulders drooped under the weight of expectation. A different kind of heaviness from a medical crisis that brought her here. I needed space, she said quietly. Then tell someone, Michael insisted. You're not just a person anymore, Ava. You're... Ethan stepped in before he meant to. She's still human. Michael paused, eyes narrowing. And you are... Ava's voice rose, firm despite its fragility. He's the man who saved my life, Michael. A brief, uncomfortable silence followed. Michael swallowed whatever he'd planned to say next. Fine, he murmured, but you have responsibilities. This incident, people will talk. Ava pressed a hand to her forehead. I don't care what they say. Michael shook his head, but the fight in him dimmed. Get some rest. We'll pick this up later. When he left, the room felt lighter, still tense, but manageable. Ava turned to Ethan with an apologetic sigh. I'm sorry. He's not a bad person. He just worries too loudly. Ethan offered. She smiled faintly. Yes, that. Ethan leaned back in the chair. It must be exhausting, being expected to be everything to everyone. Ava stared at the ceiling, her voice little more than a breath. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in a life people think I chose, but I didn't. Not all of it. Ethan listened, sensing she needed this crack in the armor to breathe. When did it start? He asked softly. She blinked, eyes drifting to him. The pressure? Probably the moment the company hit its first billion. One morning, I woke up and half the world wanted something from me. Investors, journalists, strangers, even, she hesitated, even my family. Your mother? Ava let out a humorless laugh. She treats my success like a trophy she polished herself. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. Thinking about his own mother, absent, unreachable, a ghost that left nothing behind but questions. He envied Ava for at least having someone, yet he could hear the ache in her tone. Having a parent didn't always mean having warmth. Ava's voice dropped. Sometimes I wish I could switch lives with someone who's normal, just for a day. Ethan smiled faintly. Normal is overrated. She laughed under her breath. Says a man who mops hallways at midnight. He grinned. Okay, maybe not overrated. Just less dramatic. Her laugh softened into silence, her gaze drifting across his face in a way that made him look away for a moment. Not because he didn't want her to look, but because he wasn't used to being seen that way. A nurse entered quietly, checking Ava's vitals and adjusting the monitors. Your breathing looks much better, she said. You're lucky he found you when he did. Ava turned her head toward Ethan again, eyes warm. Yes, she murmured. I am. The nurse left, shutting the door gently behind her. Soon after, exhaustion tugged at Ava's eyelids. She shifted slightly, curling into the hospital blanket. You can go home if you need to, Ethan. I don't want to keep you. He shook his head. Lily's with a neighbor now. I texted her earlier. I'll stay until the doctor says you're safe. Her lips parted with something like relief. She looked at him, long and searching, as though memorizing the kindness in his voice. Thank you, she whispered again, and this time it sounded like gratitude layered over something deeper. Her breathing slowed, steadying into sleep. Ethan stayed, watching the rise and fall of her chest, the gentle flutter of her lashes, the way her fingers relaxed at last. She looked peaceful, but not untouched. Tonight had left its fingerprint on her, on both of them. He leaned back, exhaling slowly, the hospital lights dimming around him. Something about this night, the fear, the closeness, the strange familiarity between two strangers, felt like the beginning of a story neither of them expected. Have you ever carried a secret weight that shaped you more than people realized? If so, type yes. Sometimes being honest with ourselves is where healing begins. Dawn crept gently through the blinds, casting pale gold across the hospital room. Ethan had dozed off in the chair, arms folded, chin resting on his chest, the night's exhaustion finally catching up to him. He woke when he heard a soft rustle, Ava shifting upright in bed. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked rested. Fragile, still pale but rested. Her eyes landed on him, and a small smile curved her lips. You stayed. He rubbed his eyes. Yeah, I said I would. A softness passed between them, unhurried, unspoken. But before he could gather his thoughts, the doctor entered with a clipboard. Good morning, Ms. Hart. How are you feeling? Better, she answered honestly. Thanks to him. She nodded toward Ethan, who shifted slightly and used to attention. The doctor smiled. Your oxygen levels have stabilized. You're clear to go home. But, he paused, glancing at his notes. We recommend follow-up because reactions to severe often point to chronic conditions. Sometimes stress triggers them. Ava stiffened, her gaze drifting downward. Stress. The word struck something in her, something old. We'll arrange outpatient testing. The doctor finished, then stepped out. Silence thickened the room. Ethan spoke gently. Hey, you okay? Ava swallowed. I've had mild reactions before. Never this bad. She let out a shaky exhale. My mother will use this as proof I should slow down or quit or let the company run without me. And if I don't listen, she'll say I'm ungrateful. There was something deeper there. Something bruised. Is that why you didn't answer last night? He asked. Ava's eyes lifted, vulnerable, hesitant. Yes. She doesn't call to check on me. She calls to control everything around me. Even my breathing, apparently. Ethan stepped closer. Ava, you don't owe your entire life to people who only love the parts that benefit them. Her breath hitched. He had touched the part she guarded most. Before she could respond, the door swung open again. This time, a woman in a pristine cream coat entered, elegant, stern, composed. The air shifted instantly. Ava straightened. Mom! Ethan sensed the tension immediately. Mrs. Hart approached the bed, her expression more annoyed than concerned. You gave us quite a scare. her mother said, though her tone held no warmth. Michael called me at 3 in the morning. Why didn't you tell security where you were going? Ava looked down. I didn't know I had to report every moment of my day. You're the face of a multi-billion-dollar empire, Ava. Yes, you do. Ethan watched Ava shrink inward. The confident O everyone knew dissolving into a quiet daughter trying not to disappoint. Her fingers twisted the blanket, knuckles whitening. Her mother continued, barely glancing at Ethan. And who is this man? Ethan opened his mouth, but Ava answered quickly. He saved me. Her mother's eyes finally landed fully on him, scanning his modest clothes, tired posture, and worn hands. Something unreadable tightened in her features. Not gratitude, something colder. Well, she said, I suppose we should be thankful. Though the entire ordeal sounds unnecessarily dramatic, Ava's face cracked almost imperceptibly at the dismissal. Ethan stepped forward. She could have died. It wasn't dramatic. It was real. Mrs. Hart's eyes narrowed. And you are a janitor, Ethan said plainly. A father, and the person who kept your daughter breathing last night. Ava's eyes softened with something like admiration. Her mother's expression flickered. Not guilt, not gratitude. Just resentment that she needed someone she considered beneath her daughter. Well, Mrs. Hart said again, clipped, I'll take it from here. Ava's voice trembled. I asked him to stay. Her mother looked at her as if she'd spoken a foreign language. Ava, you don't need. I do. Ava's voice steadied. Last night wasn't just an accident. It was a wake-up call. Her mother's brows furrowed. A wake-up call for what? Ava inhaled deeply, her eyes meeting Ethan's before turning back to her mother. For everything I've been running from, she whispered, including myself. Mrs. Hart's expression stiffened. Ava, this is not the time for theatrics. But Ava wasn't backing down. Mom, I need you to leave. The room froze. Mrs. Hart blinked sharply. Excuse me? I love you, Ava said quietly. But right now, you're making it harder to breathe. It was the first time she had ever said something like that. Ethan could feel the shift in the room. Her mother straightened her coat. Very well, she said coldly. When you're thinking clearly, call me. She left without another word. The door closed. Ava broke. Her breath cracked. Her shoulders curled inward. Tears slipped quietly down her cheeks. Not loud sobs, but the quiet kind born from years of holding everything in. Ethan sat beside her. Ava, I'm sorry. She shook her head. No, don't be. For once, I told the truth. He hesitated, then placed a gentle hand on hers. She didn't pull away. If anything, her fingers curled softly around his, seeking something warm in the aftermath. And then, the weight of what she confessed, what she'd stood up to, settled on her chest, equal parts freeing and terrifying. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart. Sometimes one small symbol says what our hearts can't. Ava wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, embarrassed by her own trembling. But Ethan didn't look at her with pity, only understanding. The kind that didn't require explanations or apologies. Sorry, she whispered, forcing a laugh that cracked on the edges. I'm a mess. You're human, Ethan said gently. You're allowed to break. Her eyes lifted, soft and searching. Do you ever get tired of being strong? All the time, he admitted. But Lily, she needs me. So I keep going. Ava leaned back against the pillows, studying his face as if memorizing the honesty there. I don't know how you do it alone. He hesitated. Some days I don't. Some days I sit in my car before work and wonder how I'm going to pay for her asthma meds, or how I'm going to make her feel safe when I'm barely holding myself together. Ava's gaze softened painfully. You're a better parent than most people I know. He shook his head, humble and quiet. I'm just trying. A nurse entered to disconnect Ava from the monitors. You're free to go, Ms. Hart, she said warmly. Take it easy for a few days. Ava nodded, gathering the few things she had. But she didn't move to stand. Instead, she turned to Ethan. Would you come with me? She asked. Just until I get home. He blinked. Ava, You don't have to. I know. Her voice was steady, vulnerable in a different way. But last night, something frightening happened. And today, something honest did. I don't want to face the rest of this morning alone. He hesitated, thinking of Lily, thinking of the uneasy ground he was treading. A billionaire's world wasn't meant for someone like him. But then he saw the fear flicker in Ava's eyes, a fear she was trying hard to hide. Okay, he said softly. I'll come. Her relief showed instantly. They left the hospital together. Outside, the early sun warmed the pavement, and the city buzzed alive with a vibrancy that felt too loud after the fragile intimacy of the night. A sleek SUV waited at the curb. The driver jumped out, opening the door for Ava. She paused before stepping in, turning toward Ethan. Sit with me? She asked. He nodded, and they slid into the back seat together. The leather still held warmth from the morning sun. As they pulled into traffic, Ava looked out the window, her expression caught between awe and disbelief. Last night felt like a warning, she murmured. But this morning feels like a beginning. Ethan leaned slightly closer. A beginning of what? She hesitated. Of telling the truth. For once. He waited. I've spent years pretending I'm fine, she said. Pretending I'm invincible. Pretending I'm not lonely. But when I woke up last night, unable to breathe, all I could think was, I don't want to die this way. Alone. Unseen. The confession was raw, hitting him deeper than she knew. You weren't alone, Ethan said softly. Not last night. Not now. Ava's eyes glistened, not sad this time, but grateful. The car slowed in front of a sprawling glass building, her penthouse residence towering skyward. When the security gate opened, Ethan swallowed. Everything about this place screamed wealth beyond imagination. The SUV stopped, and the driver opened their door. Ava stepped out carefully, still a bit shaky. Ethan followed her into the building's private elevator, unsure where to place his hands or his eyes. You can breathe, you know, she teased faintly, noticing how stiff he suddenly looked. He exhaled, embarrassed. Sorry, this world, it's different. She leaned slightly toward him. You brought me back to life last night. That makes you the one person I don't want to feel small around me. The elevator chimed open. Her penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors, soft neutral colors. But despite the beauty, it felt empty. Too quiet. Too cold. Like a life that looked full but felt hollow. Ava paused just inside, her hand brushing the wall as if grounding herself. Welcome to my very large, very lonely box in the sky. Ethan looked around, seeing what she meant. It's beautiful, but does it feel like home? Her silence was answer enough. Ava stepped into the living room, suddenly restless. I know what my mother's thinking. I know what the board is thinking. They'll say I'm unstable, that I shouldn't make decisions until I recover, as if my value exists only in how perfectly I perform. You're allowed to be imperfect, Ethan said. But to them, she said solemnly, imperfection is weakness. Ethan walked closer. To me, it's human. Ava's breath trembled. She stared at him like the words were a language she wasn't used to hearing. Her voice came out fragile. Ethan, be honest. After everything that's happened, could you forgive the people who made you feel small? Who ignored your pain? Who only care when you fit their image? The question didn't belong only to her. It belonged to him, too. To the years of abandonment. To the ache of losing people who should have stayed. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. Ethan didn't answer right away. The quiet of Ava's penthouse, soft, hollow, echoing, wrapped around them as though the walls themselves were waiting for his response. He stepped toward the window, watching the city wake beneath a rising sun that painted everything gold. I don't know if forgiveness is something you decide, he finally said. Sometimes it's just something that happens when the pain stops echoing. Ava stood behind him, arms wrapped loosely around herself. And if it never stops, then maybe forgiveness isn't meant for them, he said gently. Maybe it's meant for you. So you don't spend your whole life holding a weight they never bothered to carry. She breathed in slowly, eyes shimmering. You make things sound so simple. It's not simple, he said, turning toward her. But you don't have to figure out today. A faint smile tugged at her lips. When did you become so wise? Raising a kid alone will do that to you. Ava walked past him, fingers brushing the back of the couch as she moved. Would you like some tea? Or coffee? He nodded. Tea's fine. She motioned him toward the kitchen, a sleek, open space that looked more like a display room than a place anyone actually cooked in. As she boiled water, Ava paused, touching the edge of the counter as if grounding herself again. Does Lily like tea? She asked. Chamomile, he said, smiling, but only with too much honey. Ava laughed, a soft, genuine sound that warmed the coldness of the room. She sounds sweet. She's stubborn, Ethan said affectionately. She gets that from her mom. Ava looked down. Do you want to talk about her? He hesitated, then nodded. Her name was Grace. She was soft-spoken, kind. She loved music. She could make Lily stop crying just by humming. His voice softened. And she was sick before we even realized it. By the time we knew it was too late, Ava watched him quietly, her empathy so palpable it made the next words easier. We tried to make every day feel normal. But Lily was too young to understand what was happening. And I was too scared to say it out loud. Ava stepped closer. You did everything you could. But it wasn't enough, Ethan whispered. Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard I try, I'll never make up for what Lily lost. Ava placed a hand on his forearm, gentle, steady. You can't replace what was taken, but you can love her in all the ways that are left. He swallowed hard. And maybe, Ava added softly, you deserve to be loved too. Ethan looked at her, the weight of her words sinking deeper than she knew. He didn't answer, couldn't, not with a delicate tremor building in his chest. The kettle whistled lightly, breaking the moment. Ava turned away to pour water over tea bags, her hands trembling just a little. When she handed him a cup, their fingers brushed. A spark, subtle, surprising, passed between them. Ava pulled back as if startled by her own reaction. Sorry, she murmured. Don't be, Ethan said softly. They carried their tea to the living room, settling near the floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, they just sipped quietly, the city stretching endless beneath them. Then Ava exhaled. There's something I haven't told you. Ethan glanced up. She held her cup tighter. Last week, I collapsed in my office. It was a mild episode, but my mother brushed it off as exhaustion. I let her. I didn't want to scare anyone. But last night wasn't a warning. Her voice thinned. It was a message. Ethan leaned forward. Ava, I'm afraid, she whispered, eyes glistening. Not of dying, of disappearing into a life I didn't choose, of losing myself completely before anyone ever really sees me. He reached out, touching her hand again, gently but firmly. I see you. Her breath caught. She looked at him, really looked, as though his words filled a space inside her that had been empty for years. I believe you, she whispered. A silence followed, not heavy but soft. Two people sitting on the edge of something they didn't yet understand. Outside, sunlight spilled across the skyline, warming the glass, brightening the world. And in that warm glow, Ava took a breath she hadn't taken in years, one that felt free. If you believe love still wins, Ethan murmured, surprising even himself, you keep going, even on days you don't know how. Ava's eyes softened. Do you? He smiled faintly. I'm learning to. She stared at him, emotion rising in her gaze like a tide. If you believe love still wins, comment, amen. Let's fill this moment with hope. Someone scrolling right now might need it more than you know. Ava set her tea down, her hands finally steady, her breathing easier. Ethan, she said softly, I don't know what today is supposed to mean, but I know it means something. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The air between them had shifted again, warm with unspoken understanding. Ava rose slowly and walked toward the massive window, pressing her palm against the cool glass as she looked out over the waking city. It's strange, she murmured. I've spent years building towers, companies, images, thinking it all meant security. But last night, none of it mattered. Ethan moved beside her, watching the sunlight stretch across the buildings. Almost losing everything reminds you what actually counts. Her eyes flicked toward him. What counts for you? He thought of Lily. Her laughter, her stubbornness, her tiny arms wrapped around his neck every morning before school. My daughter, he said gently. She's my why. Ava's smile was small, but genuine. You talk about her like she's your whole world. She is... A beat passed. Do you want to meet her? He asked quietly. Ava froze, surprised, touched, almost breathless. You'd trust me with that? Ethan nodded. Yeah, I would. Ava looked down, swallowing hard. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not without agenda, not without expectation. Just trust. Simple and real. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. Her mother, a call she no longer felt compelled to answer. She let it ring, then silenced it. That felt good, she admitted with a soft laugh. It looked good too, Ethan teased. But then her expression grew serious, thoughtful. Ethan, I need to fix parts of my life. Not for the board, not for the media. For me, if last night taught me anything, it's that I've been alive without really living. He nodded, understanding deeper than words. And you, she asked, what did last night teach you? Ethan hesitated. That strength doesn't always mean doing everything alone. Ava's breath trembled. She turned toward him fully now, standing close enough that he could see the faint gold flecks in her hazel eyes. Ethan, she whispered, what happens now? He felt the question settle in his chest. Heavy, hopeful, dangerous. I don't know, he admitted. But whatever it is, we don't have to rush it. Ava exhaled, relieved. Good, because I'm still figuring out how to breathe again. He smiled. You're doing better than you think. A knock at the penthouse door startled them both. Security. They announced through the intercom that the board wanted urgent updates, that reporters were already asking questions about where she'd been, that her morning schedule was backed up. Ava closed her eyes, overwhelmed. I don't want to go back out there yet. You don't have to, Ethan said. I do, she said, opening her eyes. But not alone. Ethan's brows lifted slightly. You want me to? She nodded. Just walk with me to the elevator. That's all. He agreed. They stepped out of the penthouse together. The moment she opened the door, her security team straightened, visibly shocked to see Ethan at her side, a janitor in a world of polished suits. Ava ignored their looks. As they approached the elevator, one guard leaned toward another, whispering something under his breath. Ava heard it. Ethan heard it, a subtle sting wrapped in judgment. Ava stopped walking. She turned to her team, her voice calm but commanding. This man, she said, nodding toward Ethan, saved my life. He deserves respect. And if anyone here has a problem with that, you can speak to me directly. The entire hallway went silent. Ethan stared at her, moved, humbled. Ava stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. I won't let anyone make you feel small, Ethan. Not in my world. Not ever. His throat tightened. The elevator doors slid open, and for a moment they simply stood there. Two people from different universes meeting in the quiet middle. Ava touched his forearm softly. Thank you for giving me a reason to choose a different life. He covered her hand with his. And thank you for letting me in. She smiled, warm, fragile, brave. A story that began with fear now breathed with possibility. Before the elevator doors closed, Ava whispered, We'll talk soon? Ethan nodded. Count on it. The door slid shut. And in that small, quiet moment, something new began. Not a romance born of impulse, not a miracle wrapped in fantasy, but the first step of two broken people choosing to heal side by side. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the woman who learned to breathe again after almost losing everything. One click can be your way of saying, I felt this. Final moral, sometimes a moment that nearly takes your life becomes the moment that gives it back. Not because of miracles, but because someone stayed. Someone saw you. Someone cared. And sometimes that's enough to change everything.